Well, I'm super appreciative. I love your work. I mean, it's kind of a mix between sort of a classical like studies of the human form,
Hmm.
a little bit of a male erotica, and just absolutely gorgeous compositions. So,
Thank you
uh,
so much. Yeah.
how long have you been doing photography? Do you work in other creative areas?
I did not start off as a photographer. Originally I went to film school and I
Mhm,
studied film. The thing that brought me to photography was that a professor we had one semester, he told all of us in class that we should all take like a basic like black and white photography class to sort of train our eye like aesthetically and cinematically for like being behind the camera or whatever. So I did that. I took his advice and I did like a basic photo 101. And I just sort of like fell in love with it at that point. Now I have been taking pictures before that, like, as a teenager or whatever, but it was never something that I thought of as like something artistic that I could be going into or whatever. It was just something that I just like taking pictures or whatever. So I think it helped me like hone my eye when I took like basic photo 101.
mhm.
I had a really great basic photography teacher who like taught us about composition, stuff like that. So all of it like sort of tied into like the cinematography that I was taking in film school.
Mhm.
So I ended up, to make a long story short, I ended up sort of like my major was film, but my minor was photography. That's
Wonderful.
photo
And black
101,
and
black and
black and
white,
white.
black and color, and all this other stuff. Yeah.
Well, and primarily in black and white, in
Yes,
terms of figurative work.
I started off like doing just black and white. I never did color. Maybe once in a while I would do something color, but it was sort of like my aesthetic sensibility is black and white. I'm doing more color now, but if you actually just look at my work, the bulk of it is still mainly black and white, you know.
And what is it about black and white over the option of color that
I
intrigues you
just
or
think
drives
for me, black and white, I think everybody looks better in black and white, just
you?
like in a basic, simple way. And I also think it sort of came from my love of like classic movies. Like the
Mhm.
movies that I first fell in love with were black and white films, like old Hollywood films or whatever. So I think in my head at some point it just sort of gelled that aesthetically, like, cinematically, things look better in black and white. You know,
Sure. I
color
mean,
can be great as
it does
well.
resolve a lot of like variations and like skin tone and pores and
Yes,
like
yes. But there is like an art to like black and white as well because people think, oh, it's just black and white, the absence of color. But it's not just that, it's tones, it's mood, it's light, shadow. All of
right.
that can like completely change like the meaning of a portrait depending on what kind of black and white it is, you know.
Sure. Yeah, and also black and white has this ability to shift our perception of time.
Yes. That's part of like one of the when people look at my work, I kind of want them to see I want them to like look at a portrait and sort of like come back to it and think of it as timeless and that
Mhm.
I've caught like a moment in time. And I think black and white helps that. Whereas if it's color, it can date it. Or if I'm using, I also say when I'm using like more like fashion stuff, like in my images or whatever, the clothes can like be distracting. Like if it's
Mhm.
just like a portrait of someone, black and white, a headshot, body shot, or whatever, it takes you out of time and space,
Sure.
and so it sort of harkens back to like this pure classicism. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it nudity sort of levels the field right away
Yeah.
because you can't judge someone by the clothes that they're wearing and
Yeah.
plate specifically. And the black and white, in terms of like the environment, the way the skin tones work, it actually puts emphasis on the
Yeah.
figure as opposed to the environment the figure is necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is why I love a good white wall, a gray background. It's nothing with nothing in the back, nothing, no distractions.
What
Yeah.
role does nostalgia play in your work?
I think my sensibility is sort of nostalgia. Like yeah, I think I tend to like, as an only child or whatever. I'm an only child. I have no siblings. So I think that kind of like plays into it as well in some weird way.
Sure.
And memory, move. like all of that sort of like plays a role in like all of everything I do or whatever, whether I'm doing something even erotic or
Mhm.
just straight classic or whatever. It's I think all of my images sort of tie together in a continuum, you know.
Do you shoot digitally or do you shoot with film?
I shoot mainly digitally now, but I sometimes I'll shoot like off film, usually 120, but it's so expensive. So it's like I
Right.
have to, yeah. And I shoot 120, which is like I think you only get like 15 shots like on a roll. So you have to really know what you want when you're shooting with 120 film. I started off in my photography life just shooting film. Like I came to digital like late. Like everybody else was switching over to digital, whatever. I was doing digital. I was doing film, straight film up until like maybe like 5, 6 years ago. And
Mhm.
then I switched over to digital and I fell in love with it mainly because, you know, you make mistakes, you can just do it over again and you can just shoot a lot. And within that, you can find what you want of what really works. So yeah.
Yeah, the happy accidents in film are a little far and few between.
Yeah.
The overall
Yeah. When you're
cost.
paying like $40 to get like something developed and scanned and sent to you digitally, and it's like, oh God, it's like only one shot works, or like God forbid none of them really work or whatever. It's like slightly blurred or whatever. And I don't know, it can be a nightmare. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite camera that you work with, or do you shoot with cellular, or like what's your
I started off shooting when I was doing film straight up. I started using a Pentax, the straight. I call it like the college one-on-one like camera, Pentax K1000. So I mean, and that camera is great. I wish I still had it, but I got rid of it like a long time ago. I have like a Nikon FE that I shoot with for film, as well as like a old Mamiya I found like on eBay for like $50 or whatever. This is great. You know, I love that camera. When I shoot digitally, I have like a Canon film that I shoot for my digital work.
wonderful? I have a Canon as well. I love it. I love it as a studio camera.
Yeah, and
A
I'm
lot.
late to that too because and when I got the Canon, when I got digital, I was not even doing full frame. Like the camera that I just got like a couple of years ago was like a Canon, and it's like full frame. So I'm like, oh my God, I love it. It's like I keep like coming. I'm so late like with technology,
Well,
but
but also like the ideal of nostalgia, even within the technology that you're using,
yeah.
um, it kind of supports the overall themes of what you're doing inside of
I
the
think
work.
so. And I think too many times people, photographers, like they get caught up in like tech and gear.
Right,
And before they master like the gear that they already have, they're moving on to like whatever the new toy is, you know, 6 months down the road because everyone else has it, or they tell you they claim they have it or they should have it, but the work doesn't really like match the gear that they're using. I feel like
right,
it's more important to like master whatever like story you're trying to tell in your work, whatever you know what artistic expression you're trying to like convey, like to get that right. And it doesn't really matter what the gear is if
right.
you know, yeah,
I love it when people get into these, particularly photographers, when they get into these little arguments about the gear and like the
yeah. I'm like,
f-stop.
I don't really care.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm really interested in the image. I don't necessarily
exactly.
feel like I need to know the behind the scenes, the technical of that. Um,
Exactly. Like my
and
most favorite image is something I shot like with like a Holga like 120 camera, like for $20. Like it's a picture that I took like 10 years ago, like at the top of Notre Dame
mhm.
and of gargoyles or whatever. And I love that image or whatever. And it's like I shot that like on a $20 camera, like a
I
toy
do
camera.
miss the grain that you get from
Yes,
film.
yes. I mean,
I
you can
think
fake that stuff like in digital, but I feel
right,
like it's a little AI. You know,
sure,
it can be good if you're skillful enough or whatever, but I feel like it's best when you get like that real brain from like emulsion. You know,
sure.
this is really you can't really replicate that.
Yeah, and I was a professor of graphic design for many years, and I would always say to the students, I'm like, I don't want to see the tool that you worked with in the final design. I want to see
Mm,
design.
yeah,
Otherwise you're the tool, you know. So
exactly,
and so don't be a tool. And I think it's important
exactly.
to realize that there are all these various technologies that are available, but that doesn't mean that they need to be used in such a direct and obvious ways. And I think that
Yeah,
that's a manner of protecting your creativity, but also exposing the level of intention that you have.
yeah. I think so many people get derailed by like like I said, trying to like hop on the new bandwagon or whatever and the technology. But I think sometimes technology is great, but I think sometimes it can be stifling creatively if you don't
Yes.
really know what you're doing. If you really don't have a voice, to me, that's like how you separate like the artists from like people who are like the technicians. And you can take a really great picture technically and hit all the dots or whatever on the algorithm or whatever, but if it has no soul, then I
Right.
don't want to look at it again. I don't, I'm gonna move past it into something else that's catching my eye or whatever, you know.
I like the word that you use soul because that sort of leads into my next sort of area of questions is like, how do you get what you want from the models you work with, and what is your relationship with the models? How do you make them feel comfortable?
Okay. I try and sometimes it's, the models that I use they're like a mix. Sometimes I use agency models from like here when I'm in New York. I don't have like a lot of time with them sometimes. Sometimes I have like maybe like an hour or two or
Mhm.
even less than that. So what I try to do immediately is get some kind of rapport going with them to make them comfortable, to make the environment that we're going to be shooting in like something that they feel comfortable in there. And I sometimes I do that just like having a conversation with them, the music that I'm playing, stuff like that. And to like really let them know upfront what I'm like looking for. Sometimes, they come in, especially agency models, and they have like set of poses that they've been taught to do, or like how
Sure.
they need to do this commercially or whatever. And I'm just not looking for any of that. Like, I'm amazed actually the agencies in New York are like they work with me because I kind of really don't give them what they need. I give them beautiful images, but it's not really what they need. I
Right.
feel like they go to other photographers, they send their guys to other photographers to give them kind of like that commercial thing that they want. When they want something more like soulful, editorial, artistic, they send them to me because they know, and I think I've been able to build like a relationship with like certain agents in the agencies, and they
Sure.
trust me, and so I've been like really lucky with that. But yeah, basically, I try and build like a rapport with them. When I'm not working with an agency model, when I'm like finding my own guys or whatever, it's usually through word of mouth. Sometimes people approach me like on Instagram. I get a lot of people like in my DMs always asking me to like, shoot with them or whatever. And sometimes it's through that. Um, but I'm like always like very upfront about what I want, depending on what kind of project that I'm doing at the time.
Sure.
And yeah, so
And are you showing anywhere this summer?
um actually yes, today is the 6th. I was in a show like in Berlin
Uh-huh.
that ended like on Sunday, and that ran for like a couple of weeks. It was like a group show,
Uh-huh.
and it ended Sunday. And I think there's another one coming up like in the summer at some point. I forgot the exact dates. I think July. That's gonna run for like a couple of months. But those so far this year, those are the only two that I've been in, like in a physical like gallery setting, like group
Sure.
exhibition. Yeah,
I mean, the range of like possibilities are so extensive now with all the digital platforms and every,
yeah,
it's just endless possibilities.
yeah.
I want to kind of, do you have, any issues with like being shadow banned and Instagram and social media because of the content that you work with?
I feel I'm like paranoid like on Instagram because I've gotten, I'm sure maybe you on your page as well. Like I've gotten like, you log in or whatever and it says this image has been like, removed for like whatever. And I'm just like, that image, I'm like, come on now. Like this image is not like, it's not even the intention is not even sexual. Sometimes it's like vague nudity, implied nudity or whatever. I feel like Instagram or like whatever algorithm that they're using is sort of like based on like some kind of homophobic prompt because
Right.
I can go to like heterosexual photographers that I know, and sometimes they post like stuff that's like really like sexual, like
Right.
in terms of like feminine sexuality or whatever. And I'm just like, it feels like a lot of the gay photographers, the queer photographers, whatever, are the ones targeted the most, like on
Sure.
Instagram. It's gotten to the point where I feel like there's certain things that I definitely don't post there. But then there's sometimes I'll post something even in stories or whatever, and that'll get taken down. But they're not even consistent because a couple of weeks ago I had something like a story that was like removed, but the actual image that the story came from is still in my portfolio or whatever. And I'm just like, what is like, I don't get it. Like I just don't understand. And I do feel like I've been sort of shadow banned. Like I don't know what that really means. Like for like years, like my numbers did not like move at all or
Right.
like barely move. Or sometimes I'll post something and then I'll notice that I'll lose like 10, 20 followers or something over the course of a couple of days or whatever. And I'm just like, I don't really know. And then all of a sudden, like last year, like I lost like at least maybe 400 or 500 like followers over like the course of like the year or whatever. And then I got them back this year. Like I gained like all these followers. It's just weird, like the algorithm. And I don't know. I feel like, and I refuse to get like verified. Like I am not going to pay like Mark Zuckerberg like to get the little stupid blue check or whatever. I'm like, no.
Right. And I don't know that verified actually changes the
I don't
results
think
of.
it really helps you either because I'm thinking maybe that will help me like without getting like things like taken away, but I don't think that even applies for that, you know.
Well, tomorrow on our Substack, I'm publishing an article around how to get around the shadow ban because we've also had the same issue and we've remained around 2,000 followers for 5.5 years, and then 6 months
Hmm.
ago, I started testing a whole bunch of different ways, and that's why in our timeline you see so many images with text over the top of it because
Yeah.
we even have a trans male artist with nipple showing right now, and the artist contacted me yesterday and said, I'm really worried that you're going to get blocked on Instagram again. And I'm like, no, I figured out a way around it. It doesn't do much in terms of the presentation of the actual image. But I've also realized if you put things into a slideshow and you put the riskier ones after the second image, it doesn't read them. Whereas on
Yes,
Facebook,
I've noticed that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because I've noticed I did not use when I posted images, I usually post first off, when I post things in my Instagram, I'm very like anal. So I post things in threes. Like, you know, the grid three. Like I'll never post just one thing and then like a week later post something else. Like if I post something today, it's gonna be three things. And then if I have like more than one image, but you know, I'll post like, you know, one or two or three, like you say. I'll post like the more like risque ones, like you said, behind it, like that first one and nothing will happen. Like go through or whatever. But if I post it like in front, it'll get taken down or something.